Hello, everybody. Welcome to Getting Started with Pantheon. We're going to begin in just a moment. We just waiting for a few more people to show up, waiting for the stream to kind of kick off, and we will be able to begin. In the meantime, I would love to hear a little bit more about you. So if you are watching, if you want to share a little bit of something about yourself, just to let me know maybe where you're at in the world or something that you're excited to learn about today, that will help. Anything at all that we can do to contextualize this workshop to make it a little bit more specific to what you're hoping to learn about here today will make the workshop a better experience for you, which will make the workshop a better experience for me as well. So please do share something in the chat. Let me know what you are excited to learn about today. And if you want something about like where you're from right now. All right, we're going to go ahead and kick some things off. I'm seeing some great stuff coming through the chat so far. So thank you for everyone who shared something in the chat already. We're going to try something just a little bit different today. This is a webinar. We have people joining us from Zoom. We also have people live streaming directly from YouTube and Facebook. So typically, in a typical sort of webinar format, these are closed. So, you're watching me, I get to talk to myself the whole time, and hopefully I get some interaction from you in the chat. But we have had some people in our Zoom ask if they can also talk. So I am going to allow talking in our webinar, which will allow anyone in the audience who wants to kind of step up and share their voice, you're free to do so in just a moment. But just be aware for anyone who's doing so that there are other people on the call. You're not here solo. It's not a one-on-one session. And also, you are being live streamed. This is going out into the world. It is also being recorded and will be rebroadcast at a later date. So just something to throw out there, just in case you want to know that. So one moment, I'm going to allow everyone that is currently in our webinar to talk if you would like. It's totally optional, of course. With that in mind, though, one way that you can interact with me is if you have a question. Typically, I encourage you to put questions in the chat and kind of share questions at any point. You can interrupt me to ask questions. I would just encourage you to unmute if you have a question. You're still welcome to put it in the chat if that works better for you. But if you are live on Zoom right now and attending this workshop, then you are welcome to unmute, ask a question, and we can continue on our way. Now, again, chat works best if you are on the YouTubes or the Facebook, because you can't obviously unmute your voice and talk to me at the moment. So if you use the chat window, if you are on those streaming sites right now, you can just use your normal chatting, commenting window. I'll be able to see that pop up on my screen, and I can interact with you that way. All right, let's go ahead and jump in with the introduction. So hello, my name is David Needham. I'm a developer advocate at Pantheon. The majority of what I do here at Pantheon revolves around training. I spend a lot of time working on our training material, creating new programs and workshops for people to learn about Pantheon and hopefully get up to speed quickly and find success in the way that makes sense for them. I also get to do workshops like this on a pretty regular basis, which I absolutely love. Now, my background, actually, I come from an agency. I worked for an agency for many years. It's well known in the Drupal space. I spun off and started my own agency that did stuff with both Drupal and WordPress, and did that for several years. And throughout that process, when I worked for my own agency, we had contractors, we had people that were kind of coming and going. We managed our own servers, and honestly, it was a pain. It was a huge pain. I did all of that work, all the DevOps work, partly because we were very small, just a couple people, and partly because I felt the most comfortable interacting with servers directly. I felt okay SSHing in and configuring things to be just so, but frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't enjoy that work. I preferred to interact with the customer. I preferred to do training like I am right now, writing documentation and instructions for customers to be able to use the websites we were building for them. But I just didn't have time to do that kind of work because I spent too much time doing security updates for our sites, security updates for the server, the software that's actually running on the server, making sure that we had the right number of environments and workflows on the server to manage all the people that we were working with and the sites that we were managing. And it was such a pain. But I actually met with one of the founders of Pantheon at, I think it was Drupal Camp Twin Cities. We were talking about what Pantheon is and what the vision is and the mission for all that. And we decided to switch to using Pantheon. We jumped over, we adapted all of the workflows and the best practices that came out of the box with Pantheon. And immediately I was able to do the sort of work that I enjoyed. Our customers ended up seeing a lot more results because I didn't have to waste any of my time and none of the other people had to waste any of their time working on servers or the workflows or anything like that. And anyone who's ever worked on a Pantheon site can work on another Pantheon site because the workflows are the same, the interfaces are all the same, whether it's a teeny tiny like blog or a huge e-commerce big enterprise website. The workflows, the interfaces are all the same. So today we're going to be learning a little bit about Pantheon. We're going to be learning about web ops or website operations and kind of what that means for you and what Pantheon does to help you with that. We will also be taking a look at a live demo where we'll step through some of the things that might happen as you're going through the process of making a change on your development environment and moving that change up to your live environment. So there's several ways you can participate in the workshop today. Of course, the people who are here live on Zoom, you're welcome to unmute if you would like to ask a question at any point throughout the presentation. You can always do that and interrupt me. I'm used to talking to myself, so I'm going to keep talking. But if you have a question, don't hesitate to use that or the chat. Also, if you are on social media, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot, then please do make use of the chat window, the comment window. Let us know any questions or comments you have there. I will see them and can comment on them right away. And if you signed up for this class, if you have the registration, if you're in Zoom and all that stuff, then that means that you also have an email for me, registration emails and things like that. You can always hit reply on that if you ever have any questions, and I'll be able to help you at any point into the future as well. Now, this is the first live workshop. We do these every Thursday. This is Getting Started with Pantheon. After this, at the top of the hour, we are doing live workshop number 5, Going Live Best Practices. This workshop, the Going Live Best Practices, is sort of like a little clinic where we spend a little bit of time talking about the things that we've seen that can help a website launch be successful, that's best practices, as well as just leaving lots of time for questions, Q&A. We want to make sure that anyone who has questions or concerns about launching your site has a space to leave those questions and get help with launching. So if you have any of those questions, if you're concerned, if you want to learn more, stick around. At the top of the hour, we will be switching over into Going Live Best Practices. On the first Thursday, so I think it'll be next Thursday, we're also doing Command Line Interface with Terminus. Terminus is Pantheon's command line interface. It's your way of interacting with Pantheon directly from your computer without having to actually open up the dashboard. This will save you time if you become fluent and understand Terminus directly, but it also opens a door into scripting. It allows you to take those things that would typically involve clicking a lot of buttons in the Pantheon dashboard and turning it into a script that you could run with a single command or automate with a cron job or something like that, so that you no longer have to manually go through those operations yourself. So that's what we talk about. We'll do that next week. The week after that, we have Quicksilver. The Quicksilver workshop is all about showing you how to really assign scripts that run before or after any workflow in Pantheon. So anytime that you commit or deploy or spin up a multi-dev or any of those things, that's a workflow. You can have a script run before or after any one of them, which can integrate with third-party APIs and systems outside of Pantheon, and then pull things back in as well. So if you've ever wanted to say like set up a Slack notification every time there's a deployment to your live environment, you could do that. If you've ever wanted to set up an automated test to say, every time I deploy to the test environment, go out and run a visual regression test and show me the results, you could do that as well. It unlocks a lot of power and a lot of convenience using Quicksilver. And then the next Thursday, we go through website performance, where we talk about the tools that Pantheon uses to help your website be fast. We cover some troubleshooting tips if something isn't quite getting cached correctly. And then we also show you New Relic. We talk about how to monitor your performance over time and get alerts if performance is not at the level you'd expect. So if you're interested in any of these workshops, if they sound cool, then just go to pantheon.io/live-workshops, and you can sign up for any of these into the future. We actually just filled out our catalog, or not catalog, I guess, but the agenda, the schedule for the next quarter. So I don't think they're there now, but if you are not able to attend this quarter, very soon, check back in a week or so, you'll be able to sign up for any of these Thursdays going into the next 3 months. All right, let's jump on in. So Pantheon is a website operations platform, and at a high level, this WebOps thing really streamlines how work gets done through agile tools and processes. Now, a lot of those tools that I mentioned in the other live workshops, the Terminus and Quicksilver and things like that, are these agile tools. They help your team to work in a way that is much more agile. And this workshop in particular is going to be highlighting some of these structured agile workflows and other things that make it possible for your team to really focus on the results instead of focusing on the maintenance, the performance issues, the debugging of security updates and things like that, the things you really don't want to have to think about yourself. So we also like to say that WebOps is a team sport. These practices that bring together all the people on your team, the developers, the designers, the content editors, and all of the other key stakeholders, whether you're technical or not, it aligns everyone with the goal of improving the website. Now, every website is created for a goal. There's no point in having a website if there isn't a purpose for that website. And you're invested in that. There's something that you're trying to move the needle on. Once you identify what that thing is, you can measure and improve over time. But that only happens if you have the time or budget or whatever, fill in the blank, to actually do that. Well, Pantheon was built from the ground up with this sort of agility in mind, kind of freeing up your team to focus on the results. Let me explain what some of these areas that we have fleshed out for you. So Pantheon, from the very beginning, has a serverless CMS platform. And by serverless, I really just mean it's a platform where you don't have to worry about what's happening under the hood. It is a system of containers that helps you manage your sort of infrastructure that can scale from a development site that has literally no page views or just yourself checking it out to a fully functioning live website with hundreds of millions of page views. And all this happens without having to change your infrastructure. There's no migration that you have to do when you go from 100 visitors to 1 million visitors. It's all the same infrastructure. And on top of this, we actually built a set of automated site management tools that allow organizations to manage not only the sites that they're working with, however many there are, whether it's dozens or hundreds of sites, as well as the teams, the people that are responsible for making all of that work happen. On top of this automation, we also built an Agile Workflow that allows teams to seamlessly collaborate together on the pieces of the website that they're responsible for, and then push those changes up to the live website with confidence, knowing that nothing is going to break. They're not going to have a bad day when you're pushing to live because you've already tested it. You've already been assured that everything is going to go successfully. And with all of this taken care of by Pantheon, it really frees you up to focus on measuring and improving. And this is going to be different for everyone because the KPIs, key performance indicators for every website is going to be a little bit different. It could be SEO testing or optimization. It could be A/B testing. It could be user testing. Who knows? But once you identify what that KPI is, what the needle is that you need to try to move, you can start doing experiments and you can start really optimizing the website for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So to look at this from a different perspective, Pantheon, well, we're fast. Typically, if you bring a website over to Pantheon, it's about 2.5 times faster versus the other sort of like traditional architectures of website hosting. And we actually did a blog post I'm very proud of. One of our founders wrote this, and it is actually taking the Internet Archive, the HTTP archive. It's pulling out performance data, sort of anonymous performance data, and it identified, kind of passing all this through Google BigQuery, that in this one particular demographic, it really soared. It was with WordPress sites in higher education, a website on Pantheon was about 4 times faster than on-prem hosting, than a higher education environment hosting it themselves. Something on Pantheon is going to be about 4 times faster on average. So there's more, there's also less. But that data was also really interesting to me because it also found that we were about 2 times faster on average than any of our competitors at the time. Now, this could sound like salesy speak, marketing speak, something like that. But the thing that I love about this report is that it is just open data. You can go out and grab the HTTP archive from the date that we grabbed it, or update it to today, or the most recent one if you'd like. You can go out and actually go to that blog post, check out the Google BigQuery, the queries that we actually wrote for that to get those results. Check out the different metrics and filters that we use to identify the different qualifications, and then tell us if it's true. We feel pretty confident that it is, or at least it was back when we published the blog post, but tell us if it's still true, because I'm very proud of this blog post and the transparency that clearly exists there. So we definitely want to know if it's not as accurate as it could be. Now with Pantheon, you're also able to be agile. We have a platform that manages all the containers that manage your sites. So it's much more reliable than VMs and the other sorts of architecture that came before this. And this is really the wave of the future. This is the way that people work together on websites. Now there's multiple kinds of agility, and we'll talk about like team agility a little bit later. Pantheon is also reliable. If you go to status.pantheon.io, it's our status page. You can check out the current uptime percentage. We strive for 99.95% for everyone. And then for the SLA-backed uptime for those elite tier sites, we're actually striving for 99.99, which is a lot more difficult to reach, as you can imagine. But we get there. I think the elite tier is not public on the status page, but regardless, you can go check it out, see what you think. Also, all the issues that might be going on at any given moment are all published there. So we can say when we've identified an issue, or something has been reported, when we've identified it, when we're doing something about it, when we're monitoring long-term, and all of that stuff. So check it out. You can also subscribe to updates if you want to be notified if something is going on Pantheon. And then finally, Pantheon is also scalable. Now, rather than talk about scalability, let's actually identify a couple of success stories. These are really case studies that highlight 2 very different types of scalability that Pantheon handles very well. So our first case study is with the ACLU. During the previous presidential administration of the United States, the ACLU at the very beginning was seeing suddenly a lot more traffic than usual. May not be surprised to hear that, but during a particular weekend when there was some pretty big stuff going on, they received a surge of traffic in excess of 8,500%. So, 8,500% more visitors than they had been seeing at that point. But on that same weekend alone, they received 6 times their annual budget in donations. 6 times an annual budget in donations on a single weekend. So like take whatever it is that you make in a year, doesn't matter what it is, just take that, multiply it by 6, and imagine getting that on a single weekend. That is an enormous success. Fortunately, they were on Pantheon. We were monitoring the situation. We were able to tell that, hey, they're suddenly getting more traffic. Well, their website never went down. It never slowed down. It was still fast and snappy. And as a result, they were able to maximize the amount of donations that they could receive, because it's been proven. There's lots and lots of reports and statistics that show that for every millisecond that your website is slow, people are far less likely to buy that thing from the store, make a donation, kind of follow through with the commitment that you're trying to get from them. So it is incredibly important that your website continue to remain at peak performance as much as it can. All right, so that's one type of scalability, right? Going from whatever your normal amount of traffic is up to like a through the roof increase in traffic. Another type of scalability is best represented with our Google Apogee case study. So with this case study, Apogee is a API management company. They have over 300 client sites with well over 1,000 sandbox sites that they manage for their customers. And they do this with a relatively small development team, because they're able to do this with our Agile tools. They're able to go in and use Terminus to create scripts. They're able to automate things like security checks and things like that. They're able to use representative sites to test and make sure that everything works before they roll it out to their suite of sites. They don't have to have a person to manage every site directly. They can do it in bulk because of the tools that we offer and the automation that's possible through these tools. So Apogee, another great case study representing the sort of scalability, but it's a very different kind of scalability, right? It's not going from, I have traffic spike. It's going from, I have, here's my normal number of sites that I can manage with my team, to let's exponentially increase the number of sites with automation. It doesn't become a huge lift to go from, 15 sites to 100 sites or 1,000 sites. It's just a little bit more of a lift. So two very different types of scalability, but two that are both very exciting and ones that Pantheon handles very well. So let's get to the development workflow of Pantheon. Every time that you create a website on Pantheon, whether it's Drupal or WordPress, it's all the same. You get 3 different environments. You get dev, you get test, and you get live. Now, live is maybe self-explanatory, but that's where you typically point your domain. It's where people are visiting your site, buying things from stores. You might have a editor or content creator logging in to manage your content from there. All of that work is happening in live and being saved in the database, as well as the files directory. Content files like images and PDFs get created along the way. All of that is saved in live, and it is crucially important that we do not lose the database and the files, because that is our website. That's what people see when they think of our website. Well, as this is happening, we are doing constant development work in the dev environment. We are going through, we're doing security updates, we're adding new functionality, we're fixing bugs, we're improving the theme. All of this work is happening naturally over time. And when we are ready to create, kind of move to the next stage, we're ready to actually get this development work up onto our live site, we start by deploying our code to the test environment. So the test environment is a safe space. It's a separate stack of containers that is isolated from dev and from live. And when you deploy your code up to test, you actually have the option. There's a checkbox to also sync the files and database down from live. And when you do this, it's essentially wiping the test environment and rebuilding it so it is an exact copy of live at that moment when you click the button. And what this means is that you get an exact copy to test against the code changes you just made. So anything that breaks in test, you can go back to dev, you can fix it, you can refresh test again with all of your fixes pulled in. And then only when you're absolutely confident that everything is going to work, then you deploy your code up to live. And it's honestly kind of boring because you know it's going to work. You've already went through the hassle and the drama of testing it in the test environment. Everything is going to work. You deploy it to live and you're good to go. And then kind of to finally wrap it all back in, you can sync the files and database back down to the dev environment so that your next development cycle includes all of the things that have changed since the last time. So I do see a question in the chat. They say, is it possible to create more environments? Yes and no. So we're going to talk in a minute about multi-dev, which allows you to have additional environments sort of behind the dev environment. It's not possible to create more test environments or more live environments or sort of anything that upsets the dev test live workflow. But yes, you can spin up more environments for development purposes. Great question. Okay, so let me set up a scenario for you. So let's say that we are on a WebOps team. We are specifically on the WebOps team for the Pantheon Theater Company. We want to sell tickets. We've determined that the way that we find success with our website is by getting people to click this buy tickets button. The more people that click the button, the more people that actually buy tickets, and the more revenue that our company makes. So that button is our KPI. We want to increase the number of times that that button gets clicked because it's been proven through the data that we've collected that that will move the needle for us. So our marketing team has been doing this research. They have went ahead, they've done some user testing and determined that if we increase the contrast ratio of this button by changing the color from purple to red, it will make it pop. People's eyes will be more naturally drawn to the button when they visit the page. And statistically, they are much more likely to actually click the button, which is what we want them to do. So they have created a ticket for us in our ticketing system. And they said, hey, can you please change the button color from purple to red? We would like to publish this on our site. So we, as the developers, are like, no problem. We're in Pantheon, we can do this. So we open up our Pantheon website. We can see here this is a Drupal website called Pantheon Weekly Demo. We can see here that we are on performance medium tier, and we're currently in SFTP mode. Now, when you're in SFTP mode, you're able to make changes directly to the code in this environment. So that could be going through the SFTP app. Maybe you have an app installed for SFTP and you can connect directly, you can make changes like that, and that works great. It could also mean that you use a command line interface or automation to change the code. Maybe you use Drush or WP-CLI locally to connect out to the website, and you want to add plugins or modules or whatever. So that's another option when you're in SFTP mode. Or maybe you prefer to log directly into your CMS, log into Drupal, log into WordPress, and actually use the interface to perform updates or export your configuration or whatever it might be. All of that's possible when you're SFTP mode. When you're in Git mode, you're able to do more advanced Git operations, do things like merging code, and actually accept pushes from your local environment or from some other repository. So right now we're in SFTP mode because in order to make this change, we want to just do it simply and quickly. It's just a little CSS. So we're going to show how to do this. If you're not a coder, if you're intimidated by code, or if CSS is just not your language of choice, you could ignore this part. Like the point of this exercise is not to show you how to make a change to your color on your website. It's to show you the process. So I have here, let me exit full screen real quick. I'm going to click on this visit development site. This is going to open the site in my browser, and I can see it's the development site because it starts with dev dash. I can see that we have a purple buy tickets button. Back on the Pantheon interface, if I go over here to connect with SFTP, I have options here. I can get all the credentials to log into my app, or I can just click here to open SFTP client, which I happen to have open here. Now I can put in my Pantheon password in order to authenticate, or if you have an SSH key provided, you can select that here and log in that way. I recommend the SSH key. It's much, much easier and a little bit more secure as well. So with that, it dumps you into your development environment. We want to open the code folder and then really just navigate to where our CSS file is for this particular theme. Okay, I'm going to open that in my code editor, which I've set up here right next to it. I'm going to go down, change the CTA from purple to red, and click save. It automatically uploads it because that's the way that I have it configured to do. Back on the website, back on the dashboard, if I go over to my development environment, I do a refresh, and I can see, bam, we have a bright red buy tickets button, and I can already tell people's eyes are going to be drawn into that much more than the purple because the purple kind of blended in a little bit too much. So if we go back to our Pantheon environment, we can see one file change is ready to commit to the dev environment. That's right. Even though we used SFTP, which has a bit of a stigma for being like immature development, because I think a lot of people associate it with cowboy coding. Like, oh, it's a quick change. I'm just going to jump on the live environment or production site. I'm just going to make this little change. And then that ends up having a lot of serious repercussions. And it's been stigmatized a little bit in favor of version control, in favor of Git or SVN or something like that. Well, the good news is that on Pantheon, everything is managed with Git. Even though I made a change with SFTP, it is still Git running under the hood, and I still have to write a commit message in order to save my work and get it into the system. So I can see here, We have one file change that's ready to go. If I click on it, I can see, yep, I changed it from purple to red. And when I'm ready to go, I just have to write a commit message. And I'm going to click commit. All right, I see we have a question in the chat. How is version control managed and done within Pantheon since the dev process is tightly coupled with your console? Yeah, well, that's a great question. So it ties in directly to what I'm talking about right now. So because everything is managed with Git, essentially this is a Git repository. Dev is master. Test and live are both Git tags that get saved as snapshots and sort of pushed out there. And there are ways of interacting with that directly from your local environment if you'd like. You can push tags up that publish it directly, and that's sort of overwriting the way that our workflow works, but it is a possibility for people that need to do that. And then the multi-dev environments that we'll talk about in a minute are just Git branches. It's a Git branch with a dedicated stack of containers that sets it up just like our dev environment so that you're able to interact with Git as much as you want, kind of integrating with your normal workflow. Anything that you push up to the Pantheon repo will show up here in the dashboard. All right, so that commit completed. Now, if I flip over to the test environment, which let me pop that open here too, let me close the dev one. So here's right here, we're in the test environment. We have one commit ready to deploy. I'm going to put in the deploy log message. And we have checkboxes here for managing what happens when we do this deployment. We can run updates, we can clear the cache, and then this last one is the most important: pull files and the database from the live environment. When you have that checked, it will automatically rebuild the test environment with the database and the content files that have been created or that currently exist in live. So this is creating a new test environment for you that is an exact copy of the live environment and then pushing all the code up into that environment so that you can see what's going to happen before you actually do it on live. Of course, if you don't want to pull that in, maybe you have a site with a really, really huge database or lots and lots of files that would make this operation take a very long time, you can uncheck that box. Or if you just want to speed things up because you're in a hurry, you could do that as well. But of course, if you want the best representation, if you want to be absolutely sure it's going to work, I recommend keeping that there. And we can see up here in the top here that there is a workflow currently in action. We are deploying code to test and cloning files from live and cloning the database from live. It's not going through the other operations, doing Drupal updates, but I don't think there are any Drupal updates to do. And then there are a bunch of other workflows here that have been completed in the past. So if you ever see a spinning thing up here, it's a good idea to check it out if you are working with other people on your team, just to see if there's something else going on that you might need to be aware of. So, there won't be like conflicts or anything like that, but it's good to see where people are at. All right, so that completed. So if I flip back over to the test environment, do a refresh, I can see that it's working. I would then probably, to keep with the scenario, post this link over into Slack, ask our designer and project manager to give their thumbs up of approval. I would also review any automated tests that might have run at the same time. Maybe we set up a visual regression test to make sure that this CSS change didn't accidentally break a CTA in some other part of the website that we're not looking at. Or maybe we want to do a load test to make sure that performance isn't somehow affected negatively by this. Or maybe a behavior test that will actually double check that the functionality of the checkout process isn't somehow affected by this. Or an accessibility test. I mean, there's so many different types of tests that you could do to just verify that this change that we're making that's in the test environment is not going to surprise us with something down the road. Once you are confident, though, once everything has been taken care of, we will go over to the test environment. We will put in a deploy log message and click deploy. Now, in this case, I'm using the same deploy log message as the commit message, and that's totally okay. In this case, typically the deploy is describing all of the commits that have happened up to that point. And so if you're thinking about it like we're building out a new piece of functionality, in the dev environment, you add a module or a plugin, maybe you export configuration for that, maybe you tweak the theme to accommodate what this new piece of functionality is. And along the way, you're making commits, whether it's locally or through Sftp. When you go to deploy to test, it is probably a finished piece of functionality, right? Or it's at least ready to test or ready to go. And so you are describing with the deploy log message what all of those various commits are actually doing, so that over time you can look and see what has been done to your website. When did this change happen? for rolling out this new piece of functionality or something like that. So it does take a moment for this to complete. There's some other things here on the dashboard that's worth mentioning just real quick. We have a backup system. Once you're on a paid tier, you get an automated backup every day. That all comes in here automatically. If you want to restore, you can click a button to restore all three, or you can download them individually and restore them individually if you'd like. You do also have the option of manually going in and creating a 1 month or 6 month backup. And if you're using a tool like Terminus, our command line interface, they're able to create even more customization. You could say, create a backup of the database every hour, or create a weekly backup of everything and then save it somewhere else, AWS or whatever you'd like. All of that sort of customization is possible, partly because of Terminus being in place. All right, so that workflow is completed. So let's jump back over to pantheondemo.com, do a refresh, and there we go, bright red buy tickets button on the homepage of our website. So wonderful. So things are good. So we would then celebrate. We would show over time what's happening and the success of our website with our team. But this workflow, this dev test live workflow, isn't really perfect. There are some pretty big flaws. In fact, if you are just doing dev test live, you could be in a bit of trouble, because what happens if I'm doing development work in dev and somebody else comes in and is also doing development work in dev, and I take the website down because I made a mistake. There's some PHP error. It happens sometimes, maybe pretty often if it's someone like me doing it. And when that happens, you are taking the website down for everyone. You're not just halting the work for yourself, but for the other teammates that need to get their work done as well. And unfortunately, it sets you up to work in the traditional sort of waterfall method, where everything has to be done and polished and ready to go before you are able to actually do the deploy to test. Everything in dev has to be perfect before you can do that. And that's no good. Another problem with this process is that if you're doing active development in dev and a security update's released that you need to get up to live as quickly as possible, you have to figure out what to do with that code in dev that's not ready to go to live yet. Do you roll back your work? Do you, what do you do? Do you try to comment out your work and hope that it doesn't break anything on live? Do you delay actually applying the security update? That's definitely not a good idea. Well, our solution to this is multi-dev. As I mentioned before, a multi-dev allows you to have branches with dedicated environments. So it's essentially multiple development environments. And you can set these up for whatever purpose you want. So you can say each developer or each feature or functionality that you're building, or dedicated ones for security updates, or just testing things out. It's not uncommon to do things like create a multi-dev environment for a specific Jira ticket number to address whatever that bug or issue is. You do all of your work in the multi-dev. When it's ready to go, you merge it into master or the dev environment, which then sets you up to deploy to live. And because dev at this point becomes sort of like a staging ground where all of the completed work ends up, you're able to push it to live as quickly as you can. You don't have to wait for other things to be done because they're all happening in isolated development environments. So back over on our site, if we jump over to multi-dev, we can see all of the different environments we have right here. We can see a graph that actually shows how many commits behind or ahead each one of these branches is. We can also create a multi-dev environment, or if you are already working locally with Git, you might already be going through a Git flow process that involves creating a branch whenever you start some new piece of thing that you're doing. Well, if you push that branch up to Pantheon, it will show up right here in the interface, and all you have to do is click a button to create an environment dedicated to that branch that you've been working on locally. And this is huge for people that are used to just working locally, because it means that I can collaborate with other people on my team more easily by sharing my code and having a website in this shared sort of space to work on the configuration for. It also means that I can show off my work and actually let the customer or the decision maker interact with the website. Because traditionally, when I did this back in the day before using Pantheon, I would share my screen. I'd jump on Skype or whatever it was back then, not Zoom, and share my screen and show them or send them screenshots and try to get their approval, but they couldn't connect to my computer because it's all happening locally. Well, doing it all in a multi-dev is so much better because it's a fully functioning website. I can send that URL to them. They can log in and test it and make sure that functionality works or it looks the way that they expect on their device. And then once they give their approval, we can merge it in. Or if they say like, that color change we thought, like, we actually don't want that. Well, no big deal. All we have to do is go back in here and delete the environment, and everything is taken care of. Everything is cleaned up. So that is, again, so much easier, and that's happened so many times in my development career. So once things are actually ready to go, we just click the merge into master button. It'll show up back here in dev. We select the branch we want to pull in from, and it all gets pulled in. Now, there is a bit of an elephant in the room here with our updates. I apologize that we are a little bit behind on our updates at the moment. However, that is something that we would absolutely do here in our core update multi-dev. We do all the work there, test it, make sure it's working, and then merge it into dev. We actually had a problem, to be perfectly transparent. We apply these updates, and it broke. Something on the website doesn't like the current set of updates, which is why we haven't done it yet. And so the scenario we ended up with was we applied the updates in here, we reviewed it, it kind of looked fine. We didn't really look too hard, but we opened up the screen. Updates usually don't break anything. We moved it over to dev, and the website just would not respond. So what we did is we actually went into our backups. We restored the latest backup from like the day before. Everything, including the code, came back. Everything was fine within just a few minutes, and we're able to continue with the more important stuff like this training, and it didn't actually impede our workflow at all. So that is a transparent and honest case study of how Pantheon kind of saved the day for a little bit of meta of actually just doing this workshop. So with that, we are sort of at the end of our workshop. I know we're a little bit over time. We like to kind of finish up around the 30-minute mark and then save some time for questions, but I'm a little bit long-winded, so I apologize for that. But what I will do is share this link to get more information. I will also be talking about this link. I'll click through it a little bit in a moment. And if you have any questions, now is the time to start putting them in the chat. I'll be able to see them. I can address them. And while I'm waiting for you to put those into the chat, I'm going to talk about this more resources link that I shared with you all. So first of all, and most importantly to me, I would love your feedback. I mentioned at the very beginning that the majority of what I do at Pantheon revolves around training. I am constantly, and I mean constantly, weekly, changing our deck that we use for this workshop, what we do for other workshops, creating other things like that. So we listen to your feedback. I read every single one, and we take action to make our deck better. So our deck, our workshops, all that stuff. So if you have any feedback, if there's anything at all that we can improve, please do let us know. It is very, very important to me. And then also, if you really liked the workshop today, that is also very important. I'm not fishing for compliments, but we are trying to decide if this style of workshop is successful. And it's really hard to measure success for something like this. We're thinking about trying other formats instead of doing the live workshops like we're doing it right now. So if you liked this, if you felt like I did a good job, if you felt like the way I spoke or the way that I kind of demonstrated the things were good, that is also really good information to share. So I definitely appreciate that either way. Now, there are a bunch of links that I shared with you in the chat. Those are represented here with these resources, so you have all of them into the future. And then there are many ways that you can keep learning after today. I recommend checking out the Pantheon community. We have a forum. We also have Slack with literally thousands of people hanging out, asking questions, answering questions. It's a very friendly community, so don't be shy. Come on over. It's also a great way to reach out to me and other Pantheors if you have questions. We also hang out in the community. If you have a problem with Pantheon, you can always open up Pantheon support chat, go to the support tab, click the link to join chat, and they will be able to help you with those particular problems there. And then we also have Pantheon office hours. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central, we go through we join a Zoom room, not a webinar like this, but an actual Zoom where you can unmute, you can share your screen, and we will do our best to go around the room, round robin, let everyone ask their questions, everyone gets answers, and we keep doing that over and over again until we get to the end of the hour or we run out of questions. So we also get some people that hang out in office hours just doing kind of like co-working. They are curious about what questions are coming in. They're wanting to learn, kind of get deeper into Pantheon and learn about those advanced topics people are often asking about. So they'll come and hang out and they'll do some co-working in the background for that hour. And you are more than welcome to do that as well if you're just curious about what happens there. And then there are additional training options available. There are printed and like guides that you could go through if you don't like this video format. And then there are also advanced trainings. So if you want a private training for your team covering an advanced topic that we don't do in this public format, let us know, use the link, reach out to us, and we are more than happy to do that as well. All right, I am seeing some questions come in. Let me see. Jason is asking, our site runs on WordPress for content updates. Let's say our content editor wants to push a new blog post. Do they do that within the WP console directly? Yeah, so if you're wanting to publish a new blog post, you would just go to your live website, you'd log into WordPress the way that you normally would. You type out, draft your blog post, and then when you're ready to go, you click the publish button, and that's it, you're done. If you're talking about like content staging, which I know in WordPress can be a little bit of a sticky subject because the page builders can sometimes be a little bit tricky to get to look exactly right. And it's also one of those areas that can be sometimes difficult to do on live before you're actually ready for other people to see it. So in that situation, you might have to use the page builder, build out the tool, get it looking exactly right, and then export. A lot of page builders give you the option to like export your page into code. You can do that, take it to live, import it there, and then that's one way of doing it. But there are lots of different ways of solving that problem. I'm happy to talk more about that too if you have follow-up questions. All right, we have two questions from Rob. Can we run Composer or Node.js builds directly on Pantheon? Well, yes, actually. Not Node, unfortunately. That is something we've been talking about. We're working on a bit of a headless, decoupled initiative that could make some of that more possible very soon. But in the meantime, we do have some Composer support. We recently rolled out a feature called Integrated Composer. Let me just search the docs real quick and I'll get you a link for that. With Integrated Composer, you're able to run Composer directly on Pantheon. So any updates that get rolled out, you get a notification in the dashboard and you can click the button to have Composer run and update your site. So it does come out of the box with Drupal 9 as well. Since Drupal 9 is much more heavily connected with Composer, if you install a website on Drupal 9, or if you install Drupal 9 on Pantheon, you will automatically get integrated composers, no extra steps to set that up. The next question, we had issues with Pagely automatically updating our sites, resulting in front-end issues. Does Pantheon Autopilot have visual regression testing to ensure the front-end doesn't break an update? I kind of feel like you are throwing me a softball here, setting me up to talk about Autopilot, but I will take it. Autopilot is my favorite feature that we haven't launched yet. Potentially my favorite feature of all time, but with Autopilot, you're able to actually queue up updates, like they happen automatically. Whenever an update's detected, it'll automatically spin up a multi-dev environment for you, apply the updates there. It will do visual regression testing to take screenshots of the multi-dev, compare it to live. And then if everything looks perfect, or whatever conditions you set, if it looks good, it will automatically merge that into dev, deploy to test, deploy to live, and everything is done. But it's cool because you can actually set up, you say like, well, I don't want these modules or plugins to be updated. So don't even check, don't try to apply them. Or you could say like, oh, well, our front page is important, but our store page is even more important. And our blogs page is also pretty important. So it can actually take screenshots of those 3 pages or, however many pages you specify. So Autopilot is a feature that is not currently available. It is in early access or limited availability, or whatever the vocabulary word is for that. We are planning to launch it in July, I think by the end of July. So this will be rolling out to organizations on Pantheon that are at a certain tier. I don't quite know all the specifications or requirements for that at this time, but if you're interested, you can always go here, click the button to request access, and that will get you more information. So to more directly answer your question, no, we do have, with Autopilot, it is doing visual regression testing. It won't, if the website's broken, if it's not working after the update, we're never going to push that to the live website. You'll get notified about it and can go in and approve it or deny it depending on what you want to do. So yeah, I think that answers your question. I'm not seeing any other questions come in from Zoom or from Facebook or YouTube. So I think we'll go ahead and call it here. We're already at time anyway. So thank you all very much for attending the workshop today. I genuinely hope it was useful. I look forward to reading your feedback because it is very, very important. And I just want to say thank you all very much for attending again today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you around the community. Bye-bye.